Welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We like to expand our conversations, include the history, past, present, as well as in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please get social with my show, Sports 101, and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show as well as the many other shows. Keep up with breaking news. And if you miss a show, forget about it. Don't worry about it. You can listen to that podcast via YouTube by just searching Sports Zone Chicago. But more importantly, we want everyone to download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found on the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now I would like to discuss this week's topic of conversation. This week, we will discuss the name, image, and likeness, where the money resides. If you don't know or keep it up with popular culture and collegiate athletics, the name, image, and likeness bill was passed, and recently colleges have begun to allow their students to accept endorsement deals. So this week, we're going to examine not only what happened to lead us to that with a quick overview, starting with the Ed O'Banion case, and then leading up to now, and see how much money these guys are actually making, as well as the impact on smaller schools, in particular historically Black colleges and universities, and being able to offer something to compete with larger institutions. So I'd like to start out by showing this title video, which we'll unpack shortly after.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports. Nick, could you expand on the comments about Bryce Young, approaching seven figures for NIL, maybe the good and the bad of that, how that affects the locker room and the chance for, any player who comes to Alabama maybe could earn that?
Well, I think, first of all, what I said before is anything that I say now, because there's no precedent for it, you don't really know how it's going to affect things. Players have always been able to work and earn money. That's something that you could do 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's something I did when I was a player. The college landscape changed to some degree when players got cost of attendance. We made rules that allowed them to go to summer school on scholarship, which we didn't used to have. So most players with this additional money and the opportunity to advance their academic circumstance chose not to work. So all we've done is create an opportunity for players to work. The only thing is, the question is because it's not going to be equal, and everything that we've done in college athletics in the past has always been equal. Everybody's had equal scholarship, equal opportunity. Now that's probably not going to be this case. Some positions, some players will have more opportunities than others. And how that's going to impact your team, our team, the players on the team, I really, can't answer because we don't have any precedent for it. I know that we're doing the best we can to try to get our players to understand the circumstance they're in, the opportunity they have, and how those opportunities are not going to be equal for everybody. And it'll be important for our team's success that people are not looking over their shoulder at what somebody else does or doesn't do. So, but any other comments that I would make about this, with no precedent, no experience, would probably a year from now not be looked on or viewed on as very smart.
All right, thank you so much, Maya. That's Maya Kai, co-host of Sean and Maya in the Morning, anchor show at Sports Zone Chicago. My Jedi Sensei is back, co-producing or producing Sport 101. So we want to thank her, everything she does behind the scenes. Unpacking that video, basically Nick Saban talked about a few things that have been monikers or tenets of collegiate athletics, that being equality and amateurism. With the players essentially being allowed to work, as he says, different opportunities are being provided per your status and or position. For example, Bryce Young making already 900 some $1,000 and being very close to $1 million, having never started a collegiate game, is pretty breathtaking. At the SEC Media Day recently, Lane Kiffin openly stated that his portion, like almost $1 million there and never played a game. Wow. So again, this name and likeness is changing the landscape of teams. You also have to deal with some sort of envy, as Coach Saban also stated. You can't have teammates worrying about the next man's pockets or what type of endorsement deal he's getting. So this puts another layer into the framework of developing a team of A-type personality individuals that are high strung and athletic and in shape. So all these layers is going to be more things to unpack. So most likely you might see some players that have quote unquote hamstring strains but come back the next week. Maybe more things like that. People missing because this can lead to so much more internal turmoil. So getting back to the show, that's where we're at now in collegiate athletics. To give you a brief purview where this started, ever since the collegiate athletics, even back to the 80s and SMU, there's always been people lobbying for athletes, in particular athletes that bring monetary value for schools to get paid. So this came to a pinnacle in 2009 when Ed O'Banion, who was a star in the 1995 UCLA championship basketball team, filed a lawsuit against the NCAA and the Collegiate Licensing Company. That's the company that made the games for EA Sports that involve collegiate players, for violating his Sherman Antitrust Act of using his name, image, and likeness, and him not getting paid. The game featured pretty much a player that looked like him, had the same height, weight, mannerisms, shot the same, had the same number. So him, himself, and a lot of other athletes brought an antitrust lawsuit to the NCAA. Themselves as plaintiffs alleged the NCAA rules and bylaws were unreasonable restraint of trade because they preclude FBS football players and Division I men's basketball players from receiving compensation. The argument was they had a scholarship, but beyond the value of that scholarship, the schools were monetizing millions and billions of dollars, expanding their campuses. You have to remember when this first started, segregation, which happened right before the television era in collegiate sports. These schools in the Midwest, and particularly the Big Ten, benefited from getting players from the South that wanted to leave Texas and other rural places due to the different cultural mindset in the Midwest. It was less averse or in front racism. When this happened, you'll see the trend of college football going from the Big Ten, then to the Big East, and then finally recently the SEC in the late 90s. So with integration, along with the television era, a lot of these colleges improved the infrastructure of these campuses outside of the purview of the scholarships they gave the players. So that was a two-edged sword. Electronic Arts were co-defendants with the NCAA, and they had finalized a $40 million settlement, and that could net as much as 4,000 to as many as 100,000 former players that appeared in EA Sports, NCAA basketball and football since 2003. And the NCAA obviously appealed this ruling, arguing that the NCAA versus the Board of Regents of Oklahoma wasn't properly considered. At this point, the Supreme Court denied that appeal, and the NCAA was ordered to pay the plaintiffs, i.e. the former players, $42.2 million in fees and costs. After this O'Bannon lawsuit, obviously monkey see, monkey do, there was a lot more other lawsuits that challenged the restrictions on educational funding, as well as the anti-competitiveness and the definitions of amateurism. All these were combined in a single suit heard by Judge Wilkin, who ruled against the NCAA in 2019. And she required the NCAA to allow students to obtain other non-cash scholarships, internships, and other support beyond their cost of attendance for academic progress, meaning that they can get jobs. The Ninth Circuit Court upheld the ruling on appeal, which the Supreme Court affirmed. EA Sports, who had published the NCAA sports-based games, left that market. NCAA basketball 2010 was a final game in that series, and the NCAA terminated his license with EA Sports during the events of the abandoned case, again, because they didn't want to lose any more money. This picture right here is a new announcement of EA Sports announcing a new series called EA Sports College Football. It is supposed to release in 2023. The EA Sports College Football picture, it will not use any player likenesses. It'll just use the team name in respect of the O'Bannon ruling, and also use the stadiums through collegiate license. So why is the NCAA such a staunch advocate on non-payment of athletes? If you could put that picture up again, Maya, the picture that you just saw is a caricature or a joke on amateurism. If you look at the picture, you have two collegiate athletes pulling Rolls Royce, which is the NCAA, and it has flags of pro sports in the NCAA, which meaning that they're making them money. You see the caption of the athletes reads, "No money, no gifts, no cars, no endorsement deals. Tell me again why we're doing this." And then the black athlete is saying, "For an education, but I'm not feeling too smart." Again, this is a great caricature because, again, the narrative that's pushed is that the benefit is given, and particularly to the African-American athlete, because he wouldn't have went to college, and giving him a scholarship is changing his life, although you're benefiting millions of dollars, not only of his image and likeness, but what he does on the field. There's been studies that show that enrollment increases, the value of an institution increases as it wins. So again, the definition of amateurism within the context of collegiate sports has evolved since it first was pronounced by the NCAA beyond its inception in 1906. At the early stages of the NCAA, they had core beliefs that a student athlete should be rewarded and allowed to accept financially for their athletic talents, and that eventually taking money would change the definition of amateurism. But obviously, as sport and spectatorship, along with television and integration, things begin to bubble and increase at so many different levels. So looking at the course of the 20th and early 21st century, so many regulatory changes, court claims, and the beliefs over the NCAA's authority over student athletes have been changing from year to year. This evolution is what impacted the evolving logistics of NC Bylaw 12, which explains the current definition of amateurism and what it grants or restricts a collegiate athlete to do or do not. These guidelines have been described to both benefit and unjustifiably limit the student athlete's ability to monetize what he's doing for the university. However, the university is monetizing on tertiary or multiple levels what the athlete is doing, again, by using it to increase tuition, increase enrollment, and increase spending and building, and also adding athletic programs that fit under the non-revenue title due to Title IX and the equality in athletic scholarships. So in 1906, 1 year after the first college football season, there was about 18 student deaths and 150 fatal injuries to 62 members of schools that participated in it, and was called the Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Remember, at this time, football was a sport of leisure. Leisure comes from the Latin licere, meaning to be free. And to be free, you had to be an upstanding citizen and have money to do a leisure sport. So if you look at football was first played in the Ivy Leagues on a collegiate level. So all this gross misconduct on a football field was done in the Ivy League circle. Look at the pun on that. So 4 years later, they modified their name and became the NCAA. And the NCAA was also granted additional rulemaking power, which allowed them to include the amateurism and eligibility definitions. I remember at this time, the schools didn't look at sports as a revenue maker. It was something to keep the upstanding citizens of high fashion and esteem out of trouble at these schools, and the NCAA was designated as a nonprofit institution whose focus was just solely establish amateurism as a core foundation of collegiate sports. At this time, the NCAA did not allow athletes to get any sorts of payments. And another effort to protect amateurism at this time was banning the recruitment of athletes from preparatory institutions. So basically, you couldn't go to high schools in the early days of the NCAA and recruit. Students had to come to the school off their well-being or academic major and then go see the coach. In 1916, they implemented new laws designating what an amateur collegiate athlete is, as that's someone that plays sport purely for the enjoyment and developing their mental, physical, moral, and social skills. Remember, at this time in the United States, sport was considered morally to help you. So it was sort of like going to church for men. They could do this and be morally cleansed. Again, these founders of the NCAA wanted a clear line between collegiate and professional sports, with collegiate sports acting as a branch of an educational program. However, once they start taking gate receipts and seeing the benefits of the money trickle in, this changed. And just like Coach Saban said in the title video, the NCAA fluctuates from year to year to keep up with the times while holding on to this loose definition of amateurism. So in 1929, the Carnegie Foundation of Advancement published a study on the tensions between amateurism and NCAA. And they noted that 112 programs that there was threats of commercialism posed to the integrity of the sport, meaning there was 112 schools that were gaining enough notoriety in their local areas that they can charge, they can sell food there, they can make accommodations better for the fans, i.e. nicer grandstands, which later turned into stadiums, lighting for night games, and different things to improve the fan experience. The Carnegie report traced this report all the way back to profit in 1880, which was the first ticket sale. So one result of this was alumni were also pointed out at that time who gave generous contributions to collegiate athletics receive openly or convert a share of the control of the athletic team. So at this time, let's say if I gave $1 million to Yale Athletics, I could have Stanley Whittenhouse III on the rowing team, even if he wasn't good, because I gave that much money. And I can control different aspects because, again, television took a while to sweep in collegiate athletics because they thought if they put it on TV, no one would come to the game. So it did pros first, and then you had baseball. So by the time it got to collegiate athletics, it was always some sort of model. Again, the amateur collegiate athlete was granted the right to receive a payment to cover their tuition and fees in order to attend school, but they could receive no other money toward their room and board at this time. So at this time, you saw, if you look at the older movies on television, you see athletes working in the cafeteria to pay for board, or like Rudy was trying to find different places to sleep, even though he wasn't a scholarship athlete. He was in Notre Dame, but he didn't have a place to sleep. This tactic was used in order to further discourage universities from treating their athletes as professionals. But again, as the business of collegiate sports continued to expand and transform into a multi-billion-dollar industry, they would go as far to support the right of endorsement to be granted to student athletes. You had another regulation change in 2011, where current NCAA President Mark Emmert allowed Division I institutions to give a $2,000 stipend to student athletes on top of the cost of attendance. Again, just like Coach Saban stated, the current NCAA leadership, they continue to modify the rules, and that's present even today with the current name, image, and likeness rule that was put in place that wasn't there before, to hold on to the loose definition of amateurism. Again, the case of the O'Bannon versus the NCAA in 2014 was regarding the legitimacy of the rights granted by the amateurism regulations. And so many judges, including Judge Wilkin, who ruled in favor of O'Bannon, but they did not completely remove the limits of the NCAA. on this athletic compensation, which they could have done. Many judges, including Judge Wilkins, did not want the athletes to have the ability to endorse products. So another solution or buffer that they did was to raise the stipend cap from $2,000 to $5,000. When they did that, that also helped, but again, it still didn't appease because so much money was being made in regards to the millions spent on building, as well as the millions spent on operating the quote unquote non-revenue sports teams. So at this time, there was a court rule agreed with the judge that the NCAA amateurism rules did violate antitrust, but it took away both the trust fund and stipend beyond the cost of attendance. The reasoning behind this was they wanted to ensure the cash compensation was not related to education. And again, they wanted to keep on this loose definition of amateurism. There was a bill proposed by students in California to seek profit off their name, image, and likeness without losing their scholarship. This is what we're talking about today. So it started off as Senate Bill 206, or the Fair Pay to Play Act. LeBron James, when this came out, he took to Twitter saying, backing this, that this is a game changer. So this bill would allow student athletes in the state of California to use their platform and sport to make their own money. It also would allow student athletes to hire attorneys or agents for any business dealings without losing their scholarships or eligibility. Governor Newsom signed this into law in California in September of 2019. Although we're not going to effect until January of 2023, Washington State, Oregon, and a number of other states also introduced a similar bill. Even though these bills have not been passed, they have both all received recognition in their individual states. And with the name, image, and likeness being passed by the NCAA now, everyone's in full go. Below are some quick guidelines that I'm going to give you on the NCAA bylaws which shape the current rules. So some of these bylaws or rules that can be found in the Division I manual. And again, this manual is updated year to year. We have to take a test on it before you start practice as coaches. And it talks about recruiting violations. And it's basically a CYA method. So in case you do get in trouble or you have to report a violation to the compliance director, they're going to go back and say, well, you took and passed this test, so you had knowledge of that. So some of these rules include that athletes will be stripped of amateur status and the right to participate for receiving payment. Their physical appearance and likeness could be used, and they also could be used for charitable and educational purposes. The items that don't single out individual name and likeness can be sold by the institution, and items containing one student athlete can only be used for informational purposes. So if I had one student athlete on the flyer, that's the only student athlete I could have. They also had rules stating that student athletes would lose their eligibility and ability to participate if they were discovered receiving payment through endorsements and advertisements, hence the name, image, and likeness bill. The name and picture of student athletes are to be made both aware and requested before through the compliance department and sports information before the student athlete can even have any knowledge of it. And that's a rule. And they also is a responsibility of the student athlete and the institution to follow those rules. Again, at the start of every season, you have to sign all this paperwork saying you acknowledge this. So this next picture, just perusing through this, is the Northwestern Football Union. The Northwestern Football Union was a union of football players that tried to unionize and change the game of college football in 2013. So in 2013, quarterback Kane Coulter and the executive director of the College Athletes Players Association, they set out to advocate for the rights of the modern college athlete. So both of them testified before the National Labor Relations Board in February 2014, the Chicago division, and ruled on March 26, 2014, that the demands and expectations required of the athletes in question made them employees, meaning that they were demanded and expected to do over 60 hours of work outside of being a student athlete. So that was considered a job by the National Board of Labor Relations. So henceforth, they were considered as workers. They were entitled to the right to unionize and bargain for an improved working environment, such as conditions and pay. At the center of this ruling was whether or not the NCAA student athlete, however, could be classified as an employee of the university, again, due to the loose definition of amateurism, which has plagued collegiate athletes since its inception. So again, drawing inference from the Declaration of Independence, where, all citizens are created equal. However, African Americans at the time were considered citizens. So there's a lot of loopholes. And then when you look at citizenship, and naturalized and unnaturalized citizens, there's a lot of technical jargon and words that can leave you excluded in perpetuity if it's modeled right. And that's something that the NCAA did akin to the Declaration of Independence. So according to the National Labor Relations Board, key factors included the lucrative economy that Division I college football produces and the demands and regulations instilled by that athletic department on teenagers up to individuals in their early 20s and coaching staff outside of the parameters of regular student athletes. Furthermore, despite the NCAA's longstanding claim that collegiate athletes are students first, and also using the term amateurism, Kappa argued that that was built upon comparing the demands of big-time collegiate athletes to the typical American workday. And again, they stated that 50 or 60 hours that players spend in sports outside of being a student. They also said that there's more hours than a full-time employee, and they have to do all their coursework. So the National Labor Relations Board of Chicago ruled that they would appeal the decision to a 5-member board in the nation's capital. The NCAA also condemned the decision, saying they strongly disagree with the notion that student athletes are employees. And that was from the chief legal officer of the NCAA corporate headquarters in Indianapolis. So at the end of 2014, the NCAA moved to make several reforms, including protections for athletic scholarships and monthly stipends. So again, in 2015, the NLB voted to reverse the decision, and they noted that classifying scholarship football players as employees will not lead to stable, equitable labor improvements for NCAA athletes, because again, all athletes are subject to that amount of time. All athletes do not make the same amount of money for their schools, and all athletes do not go to private institutions such as Northwestern. So in state-funded cases, that would be different. So right now, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss how much these current players are making off of their name, image, and likeness deals, the impact on historically Black colleges and smaller institutions, and how women's athletics is using the name, image, and likeness to gain a voice on the nation stage. I am Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, and we'll be right back.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
Welcome back. I am Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. We talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, looking through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Again, make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. So before the break, we discussed how we're going to move into how much are players earning with their NIL deals. NIL, name, image, and likeness. This first video we're going to show is Coach Prime himself, Deion Sanders, talking about his vision for name, image, and likeness, historically Black colleges and universities, and his plan, what he was going to do at Jackson State University, which he actually implemented. So let's check out Coach Prime, and then we'll break down what he said after.
Oh, okay. Gotta take care of young coach. Oh. I like it. I want to lift it. I gotta lift it. It's gotta be lifted. It's gotta be lifted, Sam. That looks good, man. I gotta look at the other one, man. I've never.
It's the same one, except that one doesn't have the track pad.
Yeah, but red. Look. Here. I ain't never drove no red, man. Nice. What's the difference?
Same truck.
Okay. Trail ball.
The Chevy Silverado Trail Boss.
The only thing would make me happier is that we passed this rule, we passed this law where the kids are compensated for their likeness, and then we have the whole offense and defensive line with pickup trucks, endorsements. The only thing that make me happy. It's gonna happen. Jackson, Mississippi. It's gonna happen. I love Jackson State. It's gonna happen. You gotta believe. You got to believe. You got to believe that the whole darn offense and defensive lines could have a pickup truck as an endorsement. I believe, baby. Somebody that black I love. Step side truck. Like that. I think I'm going black. I don't know if it was the scripture of the Bible, but somebody famous said once you go black, you never go back.
All right, thank you so much, Maya. Again, that's Coach Prime. And basically we went on in the video as head coaches. Most head coaches, they get endorsement deals outside of their contract for clothing, apparel, shoe deals, and even local car dealerships will give you a car to drive for the season and or the year to boost their sales. And they may have you come by the dealership and speak. I've been at some schools where the coach does his weekly coaching show from a car dealership to boost sales. So a car dealership in Jackson, Mississippi delivered Deion Sanders 2 trucks so he could pick which one he wanted to drive. And in the midst of that, they began to talk about the name, image, and likeness deal. And what he said was, which would be monumental, because again, we saw Bryce Young, who was at Alabama, who's a perennial top 3 team, making $1 million before he plays. But most times on the FCS level, and particularly historically Black colleges on the FCS level, you don't see those type of endorsements. So Coach Prime was stating that he wanted his whole offensive and defensive line to get brand new trucks like that, and he believed he could make it happen, and he actually did. So we'll go over that in a second. So to talk about who had the first name, image, and likeness deal, if we look at this picture right here, this is Antoine Owens. Antoine Owens is a Georgia Tech transfer who signed with Jackson State this year, and he was the first NCAA athlete to sign an NIL deal right after it was struck. Antoine signed with King's Grooming. Himself and 3 other Jackson State players to an undisclosed deal. They didn't display the numbers. King's Grooming is a grooming company started by 3 African-American men who provide high-class grooming products for Black men. And they felt the need to partner with a historically Black college. Eric Nwako, one of the 3 brothers who runs the grooming company, said, for us, again, they have Nigerian roots, that HBCUs are very important. The main colleges get the credit and no one really pays attention to HBCUs nowadays. What Dion is trying to do to get these athletes paid and recognized is outstanding, and that's why this is our first choice to go to a HBCU. Also, Michael Strahan teamed up with Deion Sanders to benefit Jackson State students. So Michael Strahan is a partner in SMAC Entertainment. SMAC Entertainment is a multi-platform entertainment company that has management. So you can be a manager and manager actors, on-air personalities, athletes, etc. You can manage music artists or individuals in the music industry. They do branding, sponsorships, and they also have a business incubator and a production company. And this company, SMAC, was founded by Michael Strahan and Constance Schwartz Marini. And SMAC has commitments with Workforce Software, Simply Crowns, and Madison Healthplex Performance, all with Jackson State. Again, in the wake of the recent Supreme Court ruling and announcement changes to NLI enforcement, these brands are making strides to level the playing field by choosing to align directly with historically Black college and university student athletes, beginning with these student athletes at Jackson State University. These are the first of many name, image, and likeness related marketing partnerships that SMSC will forego in the weeks ahead. This is a press release from their entertainment division. So this is just the first HBCU that they're starting with. So again, if you're familiar with Sports 101, you will remember the show that we talked about before the U. So everyone talks about the U, where Howard Schnellenberger in 1980 changed the fortunes of the University of Miami, which was in a retirement community. But no one talks about in 1979, when Howard Schnellenberger was the coach 1 year prior, he played at FAMU, which is an FCS team, and Miami got the brakes beat off of them. So again, there's a lot of individuals that maybe are just tired of the monotony of college football, or they want to see competitiveness, and they're just pumping in historically Black colleges and universities now. We also have the true traditionalists that, again, whose moniker is before integration. HBCUs had the best athletes, and it should always be that way. So there's a lot of people with a lot of different ideologies supporting historically Black colleges at this time. Also making a commitment to historically Black college and university athletes, Simply Crowns, a specialty dentistry company, and they have locations throughout Texas. They're going to provide restorative and cosmetic dentistry procedures for free, and they will offer select as needed procedures to select members of the Jackson State University football team. In addition, the Madison Healthplex Performance Center, which Madison is a county in Jackson, Mississippi, they're going to provide a partnership opportunity to allow every member of the Jackson State football team, allowing them to utilize their center as a pro performance center. So they can get pro training, pro fitness, resistance bands, more specialized training that you would get on campus, sort of like going to a combine and training. And they also would have full access to their physical therapy and recovery areas. The next individual I like to highlight is a well-known name, is Hersey Miller, who'll be a freshman at Tennessee State University. Hersey is the youngest son of Percy Miller, also known as Master P. Hersey is a 6'3", 160-pound point guard who transferred and finished up at Minnehaha Academy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And his dad was able to procure him a name, image, and likeness deal that is going to make him $2 million a year with Web Apps America. Hercy Miller committed to Tennessee State after turning down various offers from Pac-12, Big 12, and Big 10 basketball teams. As again, he wants to, as the young folks are saying now, they're for the culture. They want to change the culture. That's the phrase that's going on now. Master P said, "This is incredible. This is going to change the way college athletes want to stay in school and what schools they'll go to. So more top-notch athletes will consider going to Tennessee State and other historically black colleges and by securing $2 million deals." So let's take, for instance, Hercy Miller and the Tennessee State team. So he has a $2 million deal. So if his dad was able to secure 6 more or 10 more $2 million deals, he could have a basketball team of millionaires that Tennessee State that most likely will not be there. They will be at Power 5 institutions and make Tennessee State relative like it was before integration. So again, the cap on this is unfounded. Me and Maya were talking prior to the show, and there's so many tangles and weaves that this web can fold out as this goes along. So we're just waiting to see. So Hercy Miller stated he signed a deal with the American technology company, stating, like my dad, it was a blessing, and he was fortunate to do that. Next, we have some individuals from the reigning SWAC champions of the spring, Alabama A&M. Their top receiver, one of their top receivers, Xavier Moore, and running back Gary Quarles, both signed name, image, and likeness deals with Boost Mobile. Their deals were so big, they were reported on the mobile company's social media site on Tuesday, again, being located in Birmingham, Alabama. NASA has a headquarters there. So they're kind of into technology in that part of western Alabama, kind of going into Tennessee. And Boost Mobile thought so highly of them, they put them on their website. Alabama A&M is expecting more name, image, and likeness deals, again, with the aerospace firm NASA being there and other technology firms in that capacity. Now I'd like to look at deals from the University of Alabama. The first deal we have is Trayshawn Holden. Trayshawn Holden is pictured right here. He's a sophomore wide receiver. Trayshawn Holden did not play last year. They had 4 receivers go to the NFL. And again, he's a sophomore, a true sophomore. And his biggest sponsorship is Yoke Gaming. Yoke Gaming is an app that enables you to play video games with your favorite athletes, either collegiate or professional. So basically, you can log on to the app and you can play a video game against a professional or collegiate athlete, and you have to pay a hefty price to do so. Holden also has a partnership with a College Football Edits. The next picture is Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle is a safety, and he joined ZenLoop. ZenLoop offers fans the opportunity to get personalized videos over Instagram or Twitter from celebrities or athletes for a fee. So you can have a celebrity athlete wake you up, wish you have a good day, happy anniversary, etc. So again, Alabama is just putting out one of their athletes is a millionaire, but they have a few more other millionaires on a team as well due to name, image, and likeness. And again, what Coach Saban stated, that based on the notoriety of your team, how much you win, and how much you can make the players, that more people are going to come to your school. And the same thing is happening with Alabama right now. Our next picture is Malachi Moore. Malachi Moore, he announced a sponsorship with Milo's Tea Company. You ever been in a gas station or stores in the Midwest and the South? You see Milo's lemonade or tea. So this defensive back, he also joins Auburn quarterback Bo Nix and having a paid partnership with Milo's. So basically, their pictures is going to be next to Milo's. If anyone knows about the beverage wars, that's always big. So in regards to student athletes getting away from the sports drinks, these flavored beverage companies that have drinks with no nutritional value, just sugar, are again trying to get student athletes to increase their sales. Also on Friday, Malachi shared he's on Cameo, and Cameo is a video sharing website headquartered in Chicago that allows celebrities to send personalized messages to fans. So he also has a sponsorship from them. Moore is also a player along with several other Alabama players selling autographs and items on a website called My Game Day Shop. So basically, all the gear that you can get as a player, similar to the situation with Terrell Pryor, where he auctioned off some of the stuff they gave him for free to make money. Now you can go in your closet and sign your name to some cleats or some authentic team gear and go on websites and auction it off to the highest bidder. Now, sometimes these garments go for thousands of dollars a piece. I know I worked Alabama camp one time, and I got a jumpsuit, a warm up, and I gave it to one of my fraternity brothers. And like I said, you can't buy that anywhere. You only can get that on campus, and that probably would have sold for a couple $100 on a low end. So this next picture, of course, well, excuse me, before we go to this next picture, also with My Game Day Shop, along with most Alabama players that have multiple interns partnerships. He's also partnered with PSD Underwear and Chris P Clothing. So again, picture here, we have Bryce Young. Bryce Young is the incumbent starter at quarterback for Alabama. He's never played in a game yet for Alabama. Well, actually, he did get some snaps to hand off the ball last year, but he's never threw a pass, never started a game. And this is the gentleman that Coach Saban was talking about at the beginning of the show. Alabama coach Nick Saban again said that the sophomore quarterback is the team's presumptive starter. Again, he's like Bill Belichick, and tries to hold things to the last minute. Has already owned close to $1 million in endorsement deals without playing a game. Saban stated that certain positions probably enhance opportunities to create value, like quarterback, and their quarterback has already approached ungodly numbers. He didn't want to put out what they were, and he hasn't even played yet. He hasn't even started. So to get this deal, Young signed with CAA. So instead of signing with different companies, he signed it with a major marketing company that represents professional athletes and their deals. So he signed with them to get him multiple deals. That's henceforth how he became a millionaire. Now, once this season starts, and if he does what he's supposed to do, by the time the season ends, or even before next year, he'll probably have $3 to $4 million, because with a national championship, SEC championship, so many endorsement deals will come out of that. Again, CAA represents NFL players for marketing deals and other notable athletes. Everything in high school and college football has always been equal for everyone. It's not going to be like that anymore, Saban said Tuesday. And again, he's giving inference to the bickering and moaning that's probably going to come because football is making more than this sport, or these positions are making more than these positions. So you're going to have an over influx. And I can't recruit this position because this position doesn't make this much money at this school. So to put it in perspective, Aaron Rodgers makes $24 million a year and probably $7 million more in endorsement deals because he's a quarterback. It was also stated the right guard probably makes $1 million a year and doesn't get anything in endorsement deals because he's the right guard. Nick Saban said that's the same thing that's going to happen to Alabama's team. Again, Young has one of the largest followings on social media, although not playing the game. Now, he did dazzle in the spring game, making a lot of Alabama's defenders look silly, and that's a feat in itself because these defenders are top 5 draft picks in next year's NFL draft. Again, he also signed a deal with companies such as Cash App. So now Cash App is marketing in Alabama to get people to get Cash App cards and other things of that nature. The revenue from these deals falls in line would have been expected for one of Alabama's recent quarterbacks. Studies show that if Tua had been able to monetize his name and likeness, he could have earned $3 to $5 million due to the championships he's won. Now, not leaving out women's collegiate athletics, I'd like to take a look at Fresno State women's basketball. This picture right here is a billboard in Times Square in New York. And this billboard represents Haley and Hannah Cavender. They're twins, and they have an endorsement deal with Boost Mobile and some other companies. But their Boost Mobile deal was put on a billboard in Times Square in Manhattan. And the Cavender twins, they're originally from Arizona, but they decided to go play at Fresno State. They were the Fresno State Lady Bulldogs, two leading scorers this past season. Haley averaged 19.8 points per game, while Hannah had 17 points per game. Haley and Hannah have signed what they say is the first name, image, and likeness deal on the Icon Source Marketplace in NCAA history. So just like Bryce Young, they're using Icon Sports to get multiple deals as women collegiate athletes. So some of them deals will include model sponsorship and usually cosmetics and things of that nature. Right now, they introduce Boost Mobile as well as Six Star Nutrition. Six Star Nutrition is a company that sells nutritional supplements. Again, you saw the billboard that Boost took out in Times Square to celebrate the milestone of having two twins as sponsors. Why are women sports athletes ideal candidates for brands to partner with? They said that women's sports are popular and growing, from women's basketball to gymnastics. TV ratings are exceeding recently. The most recent number was taken at the Women's Collegiate World Series, which averaged around 400,000 more viewers than the men's championship, according to shotclock.com. Because of this, brands are interested in working more with women collegiate athletes, no matter their level of fame, to get them to endorse their products and increase their sport. Again, many women collegiate athletes have been in staggering numbers and having high engagement rates, and brands want to tap into these followings. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of these female athletes, in particular the cheerleaders and gymnasts, have high followings on social media. So companies seeing this, saying they can partner a product with them and get it to so many eyes. Also looking at this younger generation who, instead of commercials, use apps as their form of advertisement as they're on their phone all day. In closing, I'd like to pose these following questions. As Coach Saban stated, what is the new tide, pun intended, for collegiate athletics? How will these teams manage millionaire players and the jealousy of players who are not millionaires? The recruiting aspect of it, saying I can go to Alabama, and if you play this position, you're guaranteed to be a millionaire. If you go to South Carolina, you play that position, you'll make $400,000. So that's another layer that adds into recruiting. Similar to Title IX, do lawsuits come about if women athletes do not make as much as men athletes? The biggest question I like to pose is the NCAA model and definition of amateurism still relevant in 2021, in particular after name, image, and likeness deal was posed? And then in regards to women's sports, will marketing and branding focus on their sex appeal versus their ability as student athletes and holistic being as a person? So Maya, what are your thoughts on all that?
What's interesting is, there's always going to be a certain level of petty. And I think Saban did nail it when he said, let's be honest, a quarterback is going to probably garner more endorsements than, let's say, a guard. If they're smart as a team, they're going to find a way to try to make sure that everybody can get at least a piece of the pie. Because I'll be honest, think about this. If you're an offensive lineman, what are you going to say to yourself? Well, why should I brother the block for you if you're making all the money? When you look good on the field, you make more money, but we help you look good. So you ever see like in professional teams, you'll have a star player who will do things for his teammates that maybe aren't making the same kind of money, like buy them watches, do this, do that. It's going to be interesting. But these are also young millionaires or young people making a lot of money that they didn't have access to. And so this is a part of the maturation process that I don't think anybody has taken into consideration. You know, if you get a person who comes and they're like, it's all about me, it's my money, it's my family, you're going to probably have some divisions on teams. Like, well, that's the way you feel. We're not going to block for you. So I think it's interesting to look at this. I think Saban has a point that this is going to probably create some issues within team dynamics and the culture. Women should prepare themselves. You're not going to get the same type of money that men will get. But what'll be interesting with this is on the upside, women's basketball, especially doing the Final Four, is always really interesting to people. Mm-hmm. If you start marketing women earlier, that might actually maybe make the WNBA more interesting to people, because now there'll be players that people will become more familiar with outside of just the Final Four. So I can see lots of reasons why this can be good for sports, but you just got to keep it in your mind that, okay, you're not going to garner the same kind of money as an Alabama or, you know, as a Clemson. But think like Deion's like, I'm trying to get everybody something to show value across the board.
Exactly.
This is just the beginning. And I do think it will have an impact with players committing to long-term careers, not so much in football, because you really can't leave football early. You can't. Maybe a quarterback, but other positions really tend to have to stay a bit longer for maturation processes. But I think for basketball and some other sports, or even think about it this way, for baseball, you can be drafted right out of high school to go play in the minors. Be honest, you may be far more interested in now going to play in college, because chances are you might make more money now going to play for a college than being in a farm system for a team.
Exactly. And then speaking of Deion Sanders and the coaches, and particularly in the SWAC and the MEAC, the amount of transfers they're getting now is partly due to the name, image, and likeness deal. So you get a lot of student athletes that may feel disenfranchised. I know you and Sean talked about the incidences at with Coach Doyle at the University of Iowa, things that happen with that. So now you got student athletes that have had that experience, realize like it's not all the bells and whistles is cut out to be. I can go here and still be a millionaire. For example, DeJuan Warren, one of the student athletes, he had signed with the University of Georgia, and he stated in an interview he chose Jackson State because Deion Sanders, the name, image, and likeness deal, and he can get 2 seasons back to back and go to the NFL. So with 20 transfers or 25 transfers that come from BCS schools, pretty soon you're going to have a Jackson State or a Morgan State or Howard beat instead of it's going to be that with a Michigan again. With all transfers, it's going to end up being the same.
And you got to think about, I mean, Deion is great for Jackson State. I mean, it's wonderful. And obviously when more of the talent increases, you're getting more recruits, you're going to see more draft picks. And that's going to really change how people look at HBCUs. And also this can generate money. But this also will make me think, how will this really impact coaching searches? You might say, hey, look what Deion is able to do because of who he is. We already know that having a coach that has a name and a winning tradition always helps. But, you know, you might get someone who's a former NFL player. Like, for instance, you might get someone like Ed Reed, who might say, I want to coach. Ed Reed's respected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out, even with coaching vacancies, if this impacts who they put in that role because of the benefit it can have for the team.
And that's actually already been a topic of discussion where there's so many. Eddie George got a job at Tennessee State. Tyrone Wheatley is the head coach at Morgan State.
There you go.
Again, my head coach, Sean Gilbert, number 3 pick in the NFL draft. So there's a lot of head coaches getting that. And some people feel like they're getting passed over that have been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years due to notoriety. So, I mean, there's already a contention within the coaching realm about this. So I think you hit that hill right on the head.
Well, hey, there's a shift with everything. So there you have it. All right. Good show. All right.
Thank you so much. Again, that's Jedi Sensei Maya Kai, Sean and Maya in the morning. Please check that show out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. And again, thank you for tuning in to Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the only Black-owned sports talk app and podcast in the United States. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Again, I'm your host, Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101. We'll see you next week at our normally scheduled time of Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm gone.